Hey, this is Mike in Peoria, and today we're going to talk about upgrading from my 2013 Mac Pro, the trash can, to the new iMac Pro. And here's what we'll cover. We'll take a look at my current Mac Pro setup. I'll talk about what I need from my computer, how I use it, the specs of the Mac Pro versus the iMac Pro. I'll show a couple of benchmarks of the new iMac Pro and performance comparison between the two based on the work that I do. And then finally, near the end of the video, I'll give you my observations on the new iMac Pro and why I decided not to wait for the new modular Mac Pro that Apple's been talking about. Let's start with what I use these computers for. Well, I'm not a professional video editor and I don't use these computers for work. In fact, I'm retired. And while I'm not a pro, I do a fair bit of video editing. I do it for my YouTube channel, for the Kewanee Historical Society, and for friends and family. I'm also an amateur photographer and I run Lightroom and Photoshop. I have a Plex media server and I use this computer to rip and encode DVDs and Blu-rays that I've purchased to watch throughout my house. I've ripped about 50 so far, and I have another 350 or so to go. So bottom line, there's no burning practical reason for me to upgrade from my 4-year-old trash can Mac Pro. But I did, and that's mostly because I'm a Mac guy. I've been a Mac guy for a long time, and I like having the latest and greatest. So here's what I need in my new computer. I need it to be reasonably powerful, I need it to be compact and look good on the top of my desk, and I need it to run cool. I don't want a big desktop like the old Mac Pros that generated a ton of heat and noise. So here's how they compare. I'm moving from a 4-core machine to an 8-core iMac Pro. The old one had the Ivy Bridge Xeon processor. The new Mac Pro has the Xeon W. I'm moving from 16 gig of memory to 32, and the slower SATA SSD to a 1 terabyte NVMe, and the thing is super fast. The iMac Pro, of course, has the 27-inch 5K screen. I had the widescreen Dell 34-inch monitor before, which I actually like quite a bit. The new one's going to be a little getting used to. Both had USB 3. The iMac Pro had Thunderbolt. The Mac Pro had Thunderbolt. The iMac Pro has Thunderbolt 3, and something I really like, and that's an SSD card reader. Here's a look at the desk setup for my Mac Pro, and that's the widescreen monitor, which I actually like quite a bit. It's not as high a resolution, but it's wide, and you can see quite a bit on the screen at one time. It's a pretty neat and tidy setup, not a lot of wires. I spent quite a bit of time on cable management. It doesn't look too bad from the back. There are 3 holes in the top of the granite that the wires go into. And on the back of the desk there, you can see 3 doors. They don't look like doors. There's no handles on them, but they open up so that I can manage the cables from the back. The first door on the left is open, and all that's coming through there is the wires from the speaker and the lamp. In the middle is where the big mess is. All the cables from the Mac Pro come down. There's a USB expansion in there as well. And then on the right, I have 2 hard drives. Working drive is the LaCie Thunderbolt 3 gig drive, and behind the door, you can't see it very well, is a 4 gigabyte backup drive. They're kind of hidden out of sight. So when you actually look at the back of the computer in the Mac Pro, it doesn't look too bad. Everything is kind of bundled together and goes into hiding under the desk. Okay, here's the iMac Pro. It came a few days ago, actually a week ahead of the quoted delivery date when I ordered it. I'm not going to do a complete unboxing. There's several of those videos on YouTube already. Suffice to say, it was the normal high-quality Apple packaging job. It looks good on the desk, so here's a shot of what it looks like all set up. One thing I like about the new iMac Pro is that it's a very neat desktop setup. There are even fewer wires than the trash can Mac Pro, which was actually not too bad itself. It looks good on the desktop. The screen's not quite as wide, so that leaves me a little more space. From the back, it's even less wires than the old iMac Pro. So let's move on and talk about my impressions and some benchmarks. The first benchmark is Geekbench, and the new iMac Pro has a single core performance of 5086 and a multi-core performance of 31270. And again, this is the 8-core. That's quite a bit better than my 4-core Mac Pro, which had a single core performance of 3481 and a multi-core performance of 14,060. The read and write performance of the new SSD in the iMac Pro is awesome. Write speeds were about 3,000 megabytes per second, and the read speeds were about 2,500. That's much, much better than the old iMac or the old Mac Pro, which was about 950 write speeds and about 900 read speeds. So, in the neighborhood of 3 times better. In real-world performance for me, I rendered and exported a 12-minute YouTube video that I'd previously done. It was in 1080p, and I did it in Final Cut Pro 10.4. The second real-world benchmark that I'm doing for my own performance is converting a ripped Blu-ray from the MKV format, which was about an 18 gigabit file, to an MV4 file, which was about 6 gigabits. In Final Cut Pro, it took 17 minutes and 46 seconds to render and export a 12-minute YouTube video that I had previously posted. And on the new iMac Pro, it took about a quarter of the time, or slightly less than a quarter of the time, at 4 minutes and 10 seconds. The second real-world test for me was converting a Blu-ray from the MKV format, which was just under 20 gigabytes, to the MV4 format, which was about 6 gigabytes. And it'll take up a lot less space on my media server. And I have a lot of this to do. And the iMac Pro did it in just over half the time, 38 minutes, compared with the iMac Pro at 70 minutes. So big savings for me. So my final observations and pros and cons here of the two computers. First, the iMac Pro is a lot faster, and particularly on the SSD read and write speeds. I'm going to like that a lot. This thing is going to save me a lot of time. It doesn't take up as much space on my desk, and it looks great. The downside of it for me is it's going to take me a little bit of getting used to the smaller monitor. I had the 34-inch wide Dell monitor before. I did kind of like that wide real estate and the ability to choose my own monitor. But I'm pretty sure that I can get used to that fine, particularly given the speed performance. Now, I didn't wait. I thought about waiting for the new modular Mac Pro that Apple's kind of talked about a bit. But in the end, I decided not to do that. If it comes out in another couple of years, I may well upgrade to that if it looks good. But I'm a little bit worried the way they talk about it in terms of modular performance, that it might be more like the Mac Pros of a couple generations ago with the big fans that were noisy. I don't really have a place to put that in my office, a machine of that size. If the new one comes out and it's more like the 2013 Mac Pro in terms of how quiet it is and how small it is, I just might upgrade down the road. But if it's not, I think I'll stick with the iMac Pro. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel.